you guys.
Word on the street is that there's a girl out there who thinks she's black.
Or a girl named WoahVicky.
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 If I enjoy this shit, I'ma eat this shit like I enjoy it.
A young girl who thinks she's black or a thug.
You're not black. Get that through your head.
And I want you to free all my hitters in the chain gang.
An enigma in many ways. But what is behind the persona? Today, we'll try and find out. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Right Opinion, the home of a twat with too much free time. And honestly, for today's video, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to go back to the retrospectives. I'm not going to lie, I haven't been feeling great of recent. In the last few months, I've been covering recent drama more and more, because for the first time in a while, there has been a lot of current situations going down. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that there aren't some really intriguing stories that many have left behind that I still think are worth talking about. Not just because they may be interesting, but because they may have left perceptions that are worth challenging. So today we're going to wade into one of the most unique stories of a cultural manifestation there is, and talk about someone who at a time of sensitivity caused so much controversy, yet no one really took seriously. That person is WoahVicky. WoahVicky, originally branded as Victoria Waldrip, is the YouTube phenomenon that could only be the product of the post-2016 reality that we appear to live in now. I don't remember where I was when I discovered WoahVicky, but it's clear that honestly I was completely fine with not being able to completely remember, because Victoria here had a persona that was rather hard to forget. In fact, I did cover her in a video a long time ago, back when I was making much shorter videos. However, I don't really think I provided too much nuance, rather than arguing that, shock horror, WoahVicky is an African American. Now, if this is the first time you've heard of this character, you may wonder why on earth I would have to argue such a presumed thesis. What would I do next? Argue that Arnold Schwarzenegger is Austrian? Who on earth would argue that such a character is not identifiable as an ethnicity that they seemingly appeared to not represent?
Yes, my birthday is March 7th, but July 19th was the day I found out I was black.
Ah yes, Vicky herself. That was what, of course, made her rather infamous. You see, in the summer of 17, when we should have all been enjoying the sunny weather, storm clouds began to form. This presence on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, this character who openly used sensitive words rather liberally and justified it under the notion of her racial identity, and then presumed to take this further and further and further. Through this provocative behavior, she quickly gathered a following from a variety of individuals. I assume some people genuinely liked her, but many were also there to just dish out heavy criticism and to clown on her whenever she decided to provide her less than nuanced input on matters of race. Through this, she quickly gained infamy, with much of this attention, whether positive or negative, snowballing into publicity. After all, white girl thinks she's black is arguably some of the best YouTube clickbait. And also, it's an easy topic that people love to jump in on because although socially loaded, no one's gonna really call you out for making fun of her. But why the hunger? Why the desire? Because although the appeal could be observed, what made people suddenly want to turn to her? I've spoken about this before in my rather old Lil Tay video, but there is this show called Dr. Phil. It's basically aimed to be a more therapeutic, professional version of shows such as Jerry Springer, the pyrocynical to your leafy per se. On Dr. Phil, he often invites a multitude of guests on who are undergoing conflict within their lives, whether that be between their friends, family, or themselves. It will often escalate with dispute, with Phil attempting to take a more mediating position and attempting to provide some form of counseling. This has had its fair share of criticism in the past, and maybe I'll dissect that one day. But for now, there is one episode that I think is quite important to focus our attention on, and it is of course the episode that includes Danielle Bregoli.
Catch me outside, how about that?
First uploaded to YouTube in August 2016, it gradually gained traction and coverage over the following months. Whenever watching it, you feel a strange sadness knowing that this was what our society had come to. However, this sadness didn't really sink in for me personally until a few months later, when her tweets started to seep onto my timeline. The ones where she was flexing about how much money she was making. A girl famous for being aggressive, unpleasant, toxic, and all around culturally clueless, and there I was, a sad student in university, doing his best not to lose his sanity with absolutely nothing. Turns out all I had to do was become as trashy and clueless as her. So I started up my Twitch channel, The Twerking Opinion, where I shook my ass for that sweet, sweet dollar. It did well, but it died shortly after, and I terminated it. Because you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I?
'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I? 'Cause you don't really want people finding that stuff. I jest, or do I?
Anyhow, although trashiness was nothing new, it became clear that there was a relatively new craving for it, particularly in the idea of clickbait reaction content that just took any crazy people doing crazy weird things, particularly girls, you perverts. I'm not sure exactly what phase we were in, but whatever it was, it created young internet sensations in probably the worst way possible. WoahVicky was definitely a continuation in this story, but I've always viewed this trend as a train of sorts that many people just got on and got off, whether it was convenient for them or whether they were genuinely caught up in their own antics, often being accelerated by commentators and audiences alike. WoahVicky definitely embodies one of these people, but no one really stopped to ask exactly what was happening, why it was happening, and why it was WoahVicky who decided to take on the burden of being this punching bag. If Vicky isn't the African-American person she always wanted to present herself as, who was she? Who is she? What were her motivations? The simple clout story is always one that satisfies our judgmental nature, but it has to be a bit deeper than that because, let's face it, I assume most people watching this video wouldn't have stooped to that level for the sake of views. So I think it's time for some theory. And you know what? After having a bit of research, I think I might just have a story for you today. So the plan will be to definitively explain the nature of Vicky's persona, starting at her channel's origins. Although it's clear that a fair proportion of her persona is rather contrived, I want to see if we can be more specific about how much is fabricated and why it would be fabricated, what we can really say about the story behind this character, and how she has moved forward to the present day. This would be pointless if it was just an exaggerated persona, but I don't feel that's the case, and given how offensive she was, I understand why some people may feel strangely towards her, but I don't know, she never rattled me as much as I might have expected her to, and I think that feeling comes from somewhere. So today I want to dive into that feeling and see what else we can find. Providing you are ready, of course, which I assume you are, though maybe you've left the video on and you've gone off to have a shower and you just like the sound of my voice in the background, which is fine too. I don't have any problems there either. Let us enter the realm of WoahVicky.
That bad machine shop is back again.
I'm sure you've heard WoahVicky referred to as her full name a few times, Victoria Waldrip. Now this may be done for the sake of formality and maybe just to emphasize how white she actually is. However, it's important to note that when she began her channel, that's how she branded herself. Oh yes, the amateur vlog filters were in fashion for this classic Victoria Waldrip vlog. Now funnily enough, from that period, a lot of her videos have been removed from her main channel. However, this one is one that actually Vicky feels can still represent her to this day. The video exhibits one quite iconic element that would become prominent in her future content, her accent. However, it doesn't actually show an awareness of how daft many of us considered it sounding at the time.
We're about to get on the train.
Yeah, the train.
Yeah. And we just went through the baggage claim and all that.
In fact, this video is a very casual vlog of her going on holiday with her friends to the Dominican Republic. Nothing is really particularly out of the ordinary. In fact, the sort of tone conveyed is a girl enjoying herself on holiday with her friends. It's almost as if the accent is only noticeable to those who are actually watching the YouTube video, as everyone else seems completely unfazed. However, as many of you I'm sure are aware, Vicky's presence on the platform precedes her own YouTube channel. Before the press attention, she had another appearance on a channel with someone known as Virgin JJ, Lil JJ, whatever he's going by now. Apparently now he's going by the name of Lil Rot, her then boyfriend. In this video, they answer various questions regarding their relationship. Nothing particular of interest comes up, just them flexing about how much they are in love for a bit and how much money they have. There is, however, this one very interesting comment.
Why do you only like white girls?
Why do I only like white girls?
I'm not white. I'm mixed.
Yeah, she's Spanish and white.
English and Spanish, hey? Although the assertion that she isn't white was also stated within the video, I assume that it may have dawned on them that being Spanish is actually a nationality, not actually a race. On top of this, most Spanish individuals would consider themselves Caucasian. That is, of course, with reference that the definition of Spanish is hailing from the country of Spain, and not to be confused with those who may consider themselves Hispanic, although there is a racial discussion regarding that too. What this also provides interest to was the fact that she divulged that this racial revelation comes from the fact that her father is, in fact, mixed race.
How do your parents feel about you dating a black man?
Satisfied.
Yeah.
Satisfied?
My dad's not white, so he don't care.
This is a narrative that she came back to reference on multiple occasions. Now, her father is a bloke by the name of Steve Waldrip. His parents were Marvin and Louise. They were also both born in Georgia to seemingly white backgrounds. Although, of course, it is unclear what the heritage of such family members would be. That is information that obviously only the family would and really should have the access to. However, when you're the only person who is privy to that information, it means that you can perceptively own the narrative, as implausible as it might seem. In months following this, a new narrative was concocted, that basically she had done some historical research of her own and found out that she was in fact 25% black. This then gave her access to the copious amounts of privileges that came with being an African American citizen, such as the glorious N-word pass.
Nigga, we made it. Nigga, I'm eating food I can't even pronounce, nigga. It took me a while, but
Who is giving this girl a career?
She was very proud of that one. It also gave her complete access to indulge in all the memes about African American culture, which was certainly unique.
And last, I'ma teach y'all how to swim like a real nigga.
Of course, she still retains her regular appearance and legal name, so she seems exempt from any of the negative racial profiling that may actually come with appearing African American. But hey, who cares about that when you can make the epic meme about African American life? People swimming. Am I right? When challenged on this, she posted further screenshots that allegedly showed that she was in fact 44% black and therefore even more African American than we initially thought, if we ignore the small print that reads thousands of years ago, of course. And in fact, now Vicky has constructed a watertight case on how she is actually African American and has clear membership to this exclusive club. Now, I wanted to take a brief aside to clear up some information here. Although most of this story is rather clear, we know that Vicky is an African American. I want to assert that. But for all I know, Victoria Waldrip may have deep heritage from the plains of Africa if you go back far enough. I mean, a lot of people do. But one of the greatest myths that even some prolific individuals have fallen foul to today is the idea that you can prove race with a genetics test. You can't. You can prove a lot, and you may even find people in your family tree who would have been identified as a different race at that time, and then try and derive that. But the race that you are perceived of is strictly within the context of society, and no genetic test can change that unless society then asserts that, which would then have to be asserted consistently across the whole society, which is just completely impractical. Vicky also stated that she will be the one who decides what race she belongs to, and if she says she's black, then she is black, which once again, there is inconsistency within society of how people understand race, but generally there is a clear understanding that if you're appearing a certain identity, then you don't really have the liberty to claim you're anything else, particularly in societies that may have serious baggage with those identities. There are exceptions to that. A good example would be the late politician Augustus Hawkins, who was fair-skinned but came from a highly familial, predominant African-American background and thus identified as that. But that's a nuance that I'm sure many people can understand, and one that Vicky definitely didn't have access to. However, this was an attitude that did not just arise from nowhere. With all due respect, it's clear that Vicky was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I doubt she would be applying for Mensa anytime soon, and although she deserves some accountability for her antics, I always felt it must run a bit deeper than just her.
I ain't one of these white folks, okay?
The strangest realization that I have come to accept in my study was that, whether exaggerated or not, it is quite likely that that is Vicky's real voice. Or at least Vicky believes it is. There's this expectation that one day Vicky's gonna open her mouth and talk normally and we'll just hear this high school basic white girl accent blurt out. But I actually highly doubt at this point. Accents are not genetic, they are definitely influenced by the society around us, depending on how easily influenced we are. And Vicky gives me the sort of idea of someone who may be a bit impressionable here and there. There is a lot of talk about Vicky's past on the run-up to YouTube, and it seems that it has been turbulent for many reasons. There was a 30-minute interview conducted by the man himself, Michael McCrudden, with WoahVicky, but unfortunately that has been lost to the vaults and doesn't appear as if it will be recovered. However, we are aware that she is a school dropout and didn't have the best time at school or after school.
I used to be really bad. Like, I used to always sneak out. I used to
Just be with the wrong crowd. I got caught for stealing a few times. I was fighting all the time. I used to sneak boys in the house. Yeah, I was like, this was like I was like 13, 14. But that's because I didn't know no better.
She was also raised in a rather broken household with her mother before being transferred to her father.
So how I grew up was, okay, so I lived with my mom until I was 7, right? I thought this other guy was my dad that she was with, well, not even with, that had kind of raised me. And I grew up with them since I was like 6 or 7. And then what had happened was my mom, she was like a little alcoholic or whatever. So then I had to go live with my dad, or else I would have went to what's it called? Foster home? Defects. They call it defects or whatever. And they're like, oh, you're not capable of living with this lady and this guy is not your dad, so you're going to have to go here. And then they're like, wait, she has a dad, whoop de whoop.
And this is all interesting information that I want to keep in mind. Another interesting clip I want to show is a rant around mid-2017 by her then ex-boyfriend, who made claims about her social life and her, quote, real behavior.
She used to walk out 4 a.m. in the morning, bro. 4 a.m. in the morning, come back at 7. Like, bro, who do that, bro? Like, I don't know what she be on, nigga, but I'm sorry for saying the N-word, but to me, that sound like some demonic possession type is, you feel me? Like, and then on top of that, bro, she claims she from Zone 6, bro. You are not from Zone 6, my nigga. You are not. You from Buckhead, nigga. That's one of the richest part in Atlanta, bro. Get out of here, bro. You from Buckhead. How you gonna say you from Zone 6? Bro, get out of here, bro. That's lame as freak. So, bro, she thinks she's black, bro. She thinks she's black, bro. You're not black. Stop trying to be black, bro. Stop. This foolish, bro. Stop trying to be black. You're not black. You are not black, bro. I got video. I got footage of everything. Your mom, bro. I can expose so much videos of you, Vicky, bro. You're not black. Stop trying to be black, bro. Bro, I even asked her this one time, bro. I was like, can you talk what? Can you talk proper? Can you talk, please talk proper for one time, bro? All I asked was once, and guess what she said? What that mean? Like, come on, bro. You know how to talk proper, bro. You was a gothic. You got picked on in middle school, bro. You was a goth, my nigga. Like, bro, come on, bro. You know you can talk. You know you can talk proper, bro. You know you can talk proper English, bro. You know you can, bro. You know it in your heart. Like, stop. You trying to be somebody else you not, bro.
Now, I'm not playing this clip as proof or with the idea that I actually believe him here. I am playing it for a few reasons, some that I want to go into detail now and some that I will save for later. July 2017 is when all this began to kick off, particularly on Instagram, which was when she was noticed by the likes of Danielle Bregoli and then became involved in very strange, bizarre disputes, provoking threats of fights and the rest, in laughably unaware fashion.
Bad hat, baby. Bad bitch. Your city's fake as fuck, bitch.
Now, though clearly a rather exceptional situation, Bregoli's trashy girl antics always made sense as an outcome of the environment that she clearly hadn't responded well to. Although clearly tormented as an individual and with probably a genuinely sad story in how it came to be, she also had a natural antagonistic attitude. This never seemed to be the complete case for Vicky. Outside obviously proclaiming that she was African American, she came across as rather clumsy and not really fitting the persona that she appeared to have chosen. Now, in this situation, there are two main causes for this. Either a person is completely putting it on for the sake of clout, or that they genuinely believe that this is who they're meant to be, but they're just completely lost as to how they're meant to portray themselves and end up looking a bit silly. With all this in mind, it's very easy to say that someone claiming they're black is clearly faking it, and in many ways, I do believe that she doesn't believe that. However, one of the things that I always noticed about WoahVicky is that she was often seen socializing with many people from a variety of backgrounds, and it reminded me of a personal experience many years ago, one involving yours truly. Back when I was around 12, I didn't have too many friends. In fact, I was at a stage between schools, and at my previous school I regularly had social issues, so I doubted I was going to stay in contact with anyone there. However, there was a summer camp that I used to come by at the school. This was a camp that at this point primarily hailed from Turkey, and given that I regularly went to the school with my dad as it also doubled as a sports facility in the holidays, I became involved with many of these Turkish students. One of the things that I remember doing doing was putting on an Eurasian accent to feel more integrated and accepted. As someone who had been ostracized fairly regularly for being different at a time, I guess my mind told me to minimize that difference. In hindsight, it was a fairly daft idea, but it was what I did to be accepted in that moment. And obviously the Turkish camp left, and at the end of the day, they were very culturally different to who I was. But what if they'd stayed? What if I'd gone back to Turkey with them? How would I have grown up? If the stories about social difficulties were correct, then it's probable that she probably just wanted a way to fit in with people. However, sometimes when you're desperate, you'll find any way to fit in, and that may come with its own risks and changes. It seems that she found solace with a certain culture that she associated with African Americans, maybe through the people who were friends with her, maybe through her relationship with little extra virgin oil. However, at the same time, because she wasn't African American herself, she wanted to strive for inclusion on the basis of a status that she knew she couldn't obtain, but wanted to obtain nonetheless, and maybe for them it felt better to validate her. And hey, if you're friends with her, there were palatable benefits too. As it's known, Vicky was living in a rather excessively wealthy family. Her father's side of the family had been involved in the real estate business, the most quintessentially American job, alongside owning a car dealership. And that would obviously be attractive for those who may be interested in developing a friendship or relationship with her. Now, I have no comment for any specific individuals involved. I have no doubt that many people were genuinely friends with her for who she was. But given the behavior of some, it became clear that eventually this sort of codependent relationship was developed, particularly on social media. One where Vicky wanted to spend time around people who gave her credibility, and many sought to be friends with her because of that growing social media presence. Her then ex-boyfriend, who had released that video completely trashing her demeanor as fake and put on, would soon be back together with Victoria and defending her behavior in some of the honestly most humiliating clips I've seen.
Majority of black people cannot swim because their skin is black, and I think it's a racial trait. People say she's not black, but like at the end of the day, she took an ancestry test and her results came in. Like, results don't lie.
This environment that began to surround WoahVicky had basically started this weird chain reaction where acceptance on the inside turned to publication on the outside. Maybe in her inner circles, people were happy to go along with it, whatever she wanted to say, and that validated her enough. Many people seemed to defend her in her friend group, whether they were going along with the act or not. However, as soon as she moved outside of that friend group, she was met with hostility from parties who had no stake in supporting her assertions. She was almost stood in the eye of a hurricane of criticism with her friends around her. This led to her going further and further and further, and maybe her parents should have stepped in too, but they were probably just happy that she'd found the limelight and the validation that she had maybe been denied in the past. As noted in another one of her videos, it was better than her previous options. But the best of a bad bunch doesn't necessarily mean good, and it was about to devolve pretty badly. Now, I must add that I'm not saying WoahVicky was completely unaware that she was not black. She clearly knew, and she clearly knowingly lied about details such as being, quote, from the six. I think those details were mainly for the sake of provocation, but they worked. People were provoked, and at the same time, facing down that level of hostility, you need some people to support you, you need some people to enable you, and people around her clearly encouraged her to indulge in that persona, to make these rather embarrassing videos that have now been deleted. No surprise there.
This is the lingo. See you later, Day. See y'all niggas at the cookout.
This is what happens when everyone on the inside is telling you that you're doing the right thing and everyone on the outside is telling you you're doing the wrong thing. I've dealt with this concept before. For some people, it might be easy to tell that these outside voices are just as valid as those on the inside. However, at the same time, we are always much more ready to value advice from friends, particularly if we feel there's a stake in keeping those friends. There are many valid reasons for this. They understand the circumstances and context that might serve better advice in the long term, and therefore, as a commentator on these matters, when I provide my own personal thoughts, I accept that I often do it from a level of distance that means that there may be context that I'm not aware of. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean I shouldn't provide my thoughts or my advice is invalid, because it might just be what they need to realize realize that actually the advice that they're receiving from those close to them isn't actually the best and is going to hurt them more in the long term. When you're on the roller coaster alongside WoahVicky, it might feel good to tell her to keep that ride going, to keep behaving provocatively, to continue that madness. Fantastic idea. It's great attention. You'll receive plenty of coverage, probably a fair bit of money here and there. You can probably sell merch, maybe have your own app, easy dollar. But ultimately, when you have no one to stop you, you'll have a rude awakening when you go too far. And that's exactly what happened with Victoria here. Though admittedly, it was a slow, gradual process. But it still started in 2017. I must emphasize that we are still in that timeline. Now, the publicity of her rather daft statements were finally beginning to come back to her. The memes were being made out of her claiming she was black, and it made it back to commentators. People began to make videos on her antics, including me. Though, as always, I was rather late and threw it in with another person, Martina Big, who in hindsight was a very different case to that of Victoria Waldrip. But anyway, the largest creator who became involved in this was RiceGum.
RiceGum, whoever the fuck he is, like, bruh, coming for me, but you can't even say nigga because you ain't black. Bruh.
Now, at this point, we were still in the I'm black phase of WoahVicky's character. It should be very clear that this was a bit of a plea for attention. This is exactly the same thing that she said to Danielle Bregoli. You can't say this word, but I can because I'm actually black. She knows it provokes and people view it as ridiculous, but you know, if it makes a good video, why not give it a try? RiceGum reacts to it with all the conviction of a failed lawsuit and provides more attention to someone who frankly did not really deserve it. However, hell-bent on maximizing the attention out of this confrontation, Vicky decided to take direct aim at RiceGum. What was she gonna say about him? How was she gonna diss him? What sort of dynamic content would she come up with?
Ching chong, ching chong, ching chong, bitch. Yum, 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 yum. Ching chong, ching chong, ching chong, bitch. Yum, 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 yum.
Ah yes, ching chong, ching chong, ching chong, bitch. RiceGum must be really quaking in his boots. And you know, it was rather pathetic. Although it might have been a nice little stunt for attention, YouTube didn't appreciate it as much and removed it fairly promptly, likely due to the match reports by RiceGum viewers above them actually caring. She then later responded by posting a statement to the Asian community saying, please don't take offense as it was only specifically directed towards RiceGum and not anyone else. There was also another statement that she made on her Instagram saying that in fact she found Asian guys very attractive and that they should DM her. The whole music video was profoundly embarrassing, but what was hilarious was the number of people surrounding her who must have thought in their head that this was a good idea. Aside from the song being terrible, this made it through filming, production, editing and subsequent upload with no one really stepping in and saying, this is terrible, this is awful. It made it through with the endorsement of basically everyone, I assume. All for a drop of clout. And it wasn't necessarily anything new. After all, she's been going around claiming that she's a completely different race. However, it was the descent to a new low, the beginning of a slippery slope that would demonstrate if no one was going to stop her, then she wasn't really prepared to stop herself. That's what happens when we become overinvested in a persona. We lose grip on our own reality and the perceptions people have outside our own echo chambers, and how people in the real world actually react.
Y'all stop comparing me to this Danielle broccoli chick. Catch me outside, nah, bitch. Catch me in the studio. How about that? And her songs is ass. I'm in the studio making real hood trap shit. Unlike her wannabe music, her music ain't never gonna hit top 10 on the charts. My music gonna hit top 10. So stop comparing me.
This didn't mean that she didn't try and flesh out her character. As mentioned earlier, she had an ongoing dispute or beef with Danielle Bregoli, and Danielle Bregoli is someone equally loathed amongst the community. But the beef at least added a second dimension to their characters. WoahVicky was probably aware that race provocation was a brand that was going to become pretty stale quickly, so needed to switch it up, and to be honest, Bregoli was probably in that mindset of feuds being good too. So this beef served as reinforcement for that relevance. Over the winter months of 2017 going into 2018, she grasped onto her reputation through reaction videos, regular provocation, and actual interviews.
Yeah, I feel like college is like a scam, and like they just try to get money. Well, like, yeah, it's a scam because college teaches you how to work for people, and most people that's successful, you don't need college. You feel me?
Honestly, I might be inclined to agree to an extent. I have my own criticisms of college, although I would add that WoahVicky might actually be the best advertisement for it. By the start of 2018, her social media presence had ground to a rather slow halt. In December, her Instagram was deleted and basically she became a punchline, rather than having any actual presence of her own. This is always what happens to people who do this. They are addicted to that high that flash of attention can provide, but therefore have to engage in more and more antics to retain the audience's attention. But she was beginning to sound like a broken record. Nothing was fresh, and she had to escalate the antics even more. And probably pushed on by a group of peers who didn't have their dignity at stake, she did what many people in her position did. She went deeper and deeper, and this led to worse and worse results. When you do stuff for the attention in the moment might feel good. If you've cultivated that reputation as that crazy girl who's just out of control, then who cares? If you'll expect that from you anyway, how else should you behave? I mean, if you tried to change it, then it would just compromise that reputation that you've worked so hard to cultivate, right? Wouldn't it? As mentioned in numerous other videos, such hype does not sustain itself, and WoahVicky's gimmick was never particularly deep and was running out of gas rather rapidly. Yet she felt constrained by her already existent reputation and didn't want to run the hype to empty. However, once the gas runs out, you're left with the fact that you made the headlines very briefly for outlandish behavior that by this point you'd hope would not represent you. Yet the people who see you will remember you for that. Sometimes you can argue your way out of it as someone who is a victim of a brief spotlight not chosen by them, but people like Vicky were seen as indulgent of that reputation and constantly clawing for the spotlight once more, which meant that their cases often came across as even less sympathetic. The start of 2018 was definitely where everything began to hit rock bottom for Vicky, with 3 specific incidents that I think really outlined the slope into oblivion that she had decided to embark on. As said, it's hard enough for the public to forget about the reputation that you might give yourself. However, there's one institution with an even better memory. That is, of course, the legal system. One during their bad books they will never forget. And it's something that will be brought up when conducting routine actions such as applying for jobs, applying for visas. You want a clean record, particularly if the persona that you're renowned for being won't sustain itself online.
I don't really think I'm black.
In January, she came to the tough realization that she may not actually be black. And this clearly had an emotional toll on her. Well, I joke, but basically the next few months were undoubtedly awful, and were mostly spent trying to recapture relevance through attention that no one else was really that willing to provide. However, I can't fault her for trying, but I will fault her for everything else that followed.
Why are you doing that to her? Get off of her! Stop! Get off of her! Get off of her! What is wrong with you? You killed it! Let her get that!
Leave. Back up.
In February 2018, she was arrested for allegedly causing a disturbance with a police officer. Apparently, she was asked to depart from a department store and she did not oblige. And then more security became involved and she resisted, and then the police were involved, and this led to her arrest. It doesn't seem like there was a serious conviction, maybe because she was a minor, maybe because the report isn't as it seemed. It's not my place to comment on that part, but it seems likely that WoahVicky's attitude was quickly following through onto her real life. And as noted, once the line between your enabled persona and the real repercussions that your behavior has becomes blurred, well, you lose your grip on the consequences that you may face. Despite the embarrassment and the nature of such an incident, she didn't really gain much attention from it. Her new Instagram was gradually gaining back followers, but certainly not at the rate someone with a milli would have hoped for. Then in the following month came the rise of Lil Tay. I spoke about her a while back, but she was basically the product of a culture that really should have been put to a stop then and there. The obsession of that contrast between innocent and sweet and braggadocious and aggressive and basically hood. People just love to see that sort of gangster talk come from someone who really shouldn't be saying it. At the same time, she also completely exposed how calculated the whole appeal was. She was someone who was completely being used. Unlike Vicky, who was a 17-year-old and still blissfully ignorant, mind you, Lil Tay was a kid who should have been doing other things outside of posting videos flexing online. That sort of attention would never be good for a 9-year-old. With Lil Tay, Daniel Bragoli, and all these other characters joining in these feuds, WoahVicky was part of this absurd, harebrained Marvel universe, and although there were people invested, it certainly wasn't for the right reasons. It was basically who could hit a new low. A lot of the time, these people were calling out some general concept of the haters, who probably didn't exist until any of them actually started posting those videos. However, eventually, with the existent beef between Danielle and Vicky, this escalated with the introduction of new characters. Vicky turned 18 on the 7th of March 2018, and therefore she was at that point legally an adult. It would be barely a month before this would further escalate in Glendale, California, where Vicky and Danielle finally had their long-anticipated showdown.
You want to run somewhere?
Oh, don't walk in front of
You want to run somewhere?
Let them talk. You ain't do nothing like that. But hey, put your shoes on.
Why don't you put your bag down? Tough stuff? Put your bag down, tough stuff.
Ain't nothing wrong with everything's right.
Hit me, bitch. Hit me. If you hit me, I'll hit me. I'm right here. I'm right here. You coming at me, so you hit me. You're so about it. Hit me. You're so about it. You're so make it bad. The fuck, always doing shit on camera. Big do something
It's
now.
all for the camera.
Okay, then do it then. Then do it. Oh. Damn, bro. What is wrong with you?
That's what I thought.
Nigga, a pussy, boy.
It was about as anticlimactic as one could expect, and only further served to embarrass the Instagram sensation. Lil Tay, backed by her brother, was also there to get in on the CLOUT fest and try and involve herself in this clash of the titans. This showdown provoked plenty of attention, and the commentators were all over it, expressing their excitement at the sheer chaos that was being wrought. However, there was something a bit more technical at play, because now Vicky had turned 18, whether she wanted to admit it or not, she was a responsible adult. And this was something that she noted in a video about the incident.
For all you dumbass kids that keep commenting about me in a bad baby situation, y'all don't even know what really happened. That bitch is scary. That bitch snuck me from behind while I was on the ground trying to grab my purse. Let me tell y'all something. This bitch waited till I was 18 to really fight me. Like, bitch, we had beef for a whole year. I just turned 18, and then you want to fight me?
Brigoli was someone who was not an adult. Now, we know that she hadn't waited tactically. We actually know that at this point, this whole feud was completely fake. But Vicky did have, at this point, an awareness of possible consequences that her behavior might ensue, and this was about to become very serious. At the end of the day, this may be one big act, but you have to make sure the other person is in on the joke. With the Brigoli fight, it's okay. No one else has to understand it's fake as long as the people feuding do. There's no one with huge stakes in this race. There's no big gang behind you. But what happens when the act goes too far?
They hating, but the money keep dancing. I ain't doing shit unless I get a fraction. Bad baby, you is not with that action. You from the suburbs, bitch, you not with that action.
In April/May, around the same time, WoahVicky made a video to one of her songs that ended up on World Star Hip Hop. This received a significant amount of attention, obviously a lot of negative attention. One of these people who did not respond well was rapper Snoop Dogg. He was not pleased about the promotion of this, so he expressed his dissatisfaction. I'll see if I can find these clips from the vault, but I'm not too optimistic. This is just people's word, but it seems pretty believable. Anyhow, this provoked a response from Vicky, who clearly felt like she had to assert herself on Snoop Dogg's turf. All I'll say is that it was slightly ill-advised. Yes, this was a video of her threatening real gangster Snoop Dogg. Not a joke, not a meme, just a really, really bad idea. Regardless, Snoop Dogg obviously didn't take it too well, but took it with a level of professionalism that you'd expect from someone having to deal with basically what seemed like a rowdy teenager.
I can't believe you said something about me. I'm gonna leave it alone though, because you don't know no better. And them goofball ass niggas you got with you, they don't know no better either. That's why I'm in the gym, so I can fuck one of y'all up on sight. No, I'm just playing. Oh my God, what has hip-hop come to?
Either way, she quickly backpedaled and apologized.
I want to say that we apologize to Snoop Dogg, you know what I'm saying? On behalf of what he said, what I said, you know what I'm saying? He really ain't know what he said because somebody told him what. Because I was out there doing my own thing, so I didn't hear him say that. But you know what I'm saying? Somebody told him what to say. He really ain't know what that meant. You know what I'm saying? Like, we shouldn't have listened, because at the end of the day, we are our own person. We can make our own decision, but sometimes it just be like that when it be in a moment, you feel me? Like, people be telling us what to do and we just be listening, but at the end of the day, we learned our lesson. We gonna stop all that listening to folks.
The wise thing to do, all things considered. But it's clear at this point she was becoming far too invested in the persona, and it was becoming dangerous. Here she was with other clueless kids, involving herself in something she clearly didn't understand. She may understand that she's not black, but she was still trying to assert herself in a culture that only has idols on the grittiest of terms. Vicky was trying to enter a culture that she didn't understand, and it was time that she took a step back. Vicky is white, but she's more than that. You can be white and have a rough upbringing. You can be from a really nasty area. But Vicky, in spite of her struggles, clearly never had that intimate experience. She was completely out of her depth. Now, I do not hate her for that. She didn't choose the family that she was born into, and if she wants to become more culturally experienced, then who am I to take that away? But it became clear that it was not about the cultural experience that Vicky was engaged in. She was engaged in the grandstanding persona that many actual rappers broadcast to their audience. But the difference is these rappers only behave that way because they've probably had the experience that has hardened them to having that outlook. With someone like Vicky, it's just a front. It's a persona. She's not gangster. All the cat fights and online ranting showed someone who was gleefully out of touch. And to be honest, if I was Snoop Dogg, I'd be kind of pissed off too. Imagine World Star Hip Hop publishing a video from WoahVicky and not the numerous artists who probably deserved that platform more and probably needed it more because they actually experienced the backgrounds that they claimed to represent and didn't have a load of money to already flex. Vicky represented the most vapid elements of hip-hop culture, the sort of blind acceptance that someone has money and the erosion of the visibility of actual experiences that makes the acquisition of income a victorious feeling for those who have actually been impoverished. So yeah, going all big man, threatening someone who has a legitimate problem with what you represent is probably a bad idea. And I think that was probably the wake-up call she needed, because if she wanted to talk the talk, she was going to be forced to walk the walk eventually. It was also important to note that in spite of the infamy that this had obtained her, this didn't really gain her much attention on the socials other than Instagram, and even then it didn't seem to be the best sort of publicity. The statement, any publicity is good publicity, may be true if that's the brand you seek, but the problem is, once the bad publicity has died down, you'll either cascade into the pits of oblivion or go out doing something incredibly stupid. It seems that Vicky had the latter in mind when she made that video threatening Snoop Doggy Dogg here, but by the end of the week, she was singing a very different tune.
I didn't really mean to disrespect nobody in that type of way. I got respect for him and, you know what I'm saying, and his people, you know what I'm saying. I realized what I said was wrong, but I would rather apologize to him.
Now this could have been the end of Vicky. Honestly, I think many of us expected it to be. It's clear that she didn't actually have the guts to push on in that lane, but at the same time, it may have been the worst time to give up too, because not only would she be exiting the game with a terrible reputation, she'd leave the game with a pathetic one. No one inside or outside of this industry was going to take her seriously, so the only other option was to use what she had left of her platform to retain her credibility, and she only had a limited amount of time. A heavy task, all things considered, because she had spent nearly a year at this point building her reputation up as anything but that. However, what we were about to witness was perhaps one of the most incredible redemption arcs in history.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Vicky. I'm back with another video. Today we're gonna be talking about the Lil Tay situation, what really happened between me and her, or should I say her brother.
At the end of the day, WoahVicky's story is morally dubious, but she did have one ace up her sleeve. That she was intimate with an industry that has acted much worse than her in many capacities. One of those prime examples was our friend Lil Tay, a child who was caught up unwillingly in a situation they didn't deserve. So whether she intended to or not, blowing the whistle on Lil Tay's reputation was probably the best thing she could do. Now at that point, it had already been established that Lil Tay had other people pulling the strings, as if it was not obvious already. However, having someone perceptibly close and invested in her success as WoahVicky, someone who in many regards could benefit from her doing well, to have her actually turn around and say no, something's wrong, was an important statement, and a lot of people recognize that.
Let me just start by saying Y'all think this is Lil Tay? This is not Lil Tay. Let me tell you, Lil Tay is a little girl, a 10-year-old girl who came from Canada, Vancouver, who plays ballet. You know what I'm saying? She don't know nothing about no rappers. She don't know nothing about flexing. It's her brother that runs her account, and it's her brother that tells her what to do, and it's her brother in her ear. You know what I'm saying? She's only 10 years old. She's really a good person. Like, it's just her brother in her ear telling her what to do. Like, he makes her cry. Like, we went to a Chief Keef concert and she did really good, and afterwards he started yelling at her and was like, why'd you do that? You did it wrong, da-da-da-da-da. And then she started crying because, like, she's 10 years old. She doesn't know how to handle all that.
Now, I'm not saying that this was a tactical move by any means. As mentioned throughout the video, I don't feel like she's always been the most self-aware person. I do feel that her behavior was in part made possible through the enabling of peers, and the situation may have just resonated with her in that specific moment. Maybe she genuinely related. I feel that it could well have been a moment of sobriety from her behalf. It just turned out to be very beneficial because for once, people valued her words. And I don't think people would have valued her word on any other matter. So it was the best time to start repairing that reputation. Vicky needed to take a step back from such a toxic environment. That sort of stuff, whether put on or real, is not healthy for an individual. And by doing it in a way that held elements of her character while helping another person who was clearly suffering, she did it in an incredibly honorable, respectful way. This then gave her the credibility to call out various other aspects of her life. And for once, many people actually supported her.
I just want to let you know, Lil Tay, if you are watching this, like, I fucks with you. It's just like your brother. You know what I'm saying? I know at the end of the day that's your brother, and you know what I'm saying, y'all close, but you know, despite what he thinks about me, I really do like you. It's just like, you know, he doesn't like me or whatever, so it's just gonna be like that. But this video is only for Jason, her brother. It has nothing to do with her. Like, she's really a good person. It's just the person who runs her page and stuff. You know, he needs to get caught out for what he does because that's messed up.
In a run of videos, she blew the whistle on these sides and the nature of her content. In another one that I've already mentioned, she called out the fakeness of her beef with Danielle Bregoli, revealing DMs that essentially showed that the whole dispute was completely orchestrated and done with the belief that it would be good publicity for both of them. This run of whistleblowing on her antics allowed her to restore some level of reputation as an actually real person who knew who she was.
Basically, like, that's my homegirl. Like, we cool in real life. So basically what happened was, she hit me up. She's like, yo, let's do this little publicity stunt. You know, it's finna be good for both of us. We finna be all over the shade room, all over World Star. Like, this shit finna go up. I'm like, okay. We can do that, You know, all the other little beef we done did, it just for the ground. Like, we don't like each other. Like, because let me tell y'all, whenever people be beefing on social media, other people eat that shit up.
In another video, she talks about her insecurities and vents about how she views social pressure on individuals. Once again, she's not the most articulate, but it's decent advice for those who are lacking self-confidence.
So that's just what I got to say today about, you know, self-confidence and loving yourself. You know, no matter what people say, remember, beauty comes within, not on the outside. Outside look cool or whatever.
For the moment, Vicky's provocative content was great publicity, but it was also a publicity that would either lead to you going down a road with legitimate danger, as demonstrated by those few run-ins, or burning out because you can't top those antics. It's the classic SpongeBob rip my pants gag. Once you've escalated it, repeating it will come with diminished returns every time, and going over the edge will just lead to you being shot down. A fresh start was the perfect option. Although it seemed impossible for her to obtain that, she did it for those she cared about, in the form of a selfless act that also helped her move away from that behavior. Of course, not many people see her as that post-clarity person, but I guess she is there now.
I'm gonna get on a little topic today. It's gonna be about my relationships and, you know, my love life and stuff.
In another video, she talks about her ex, Pappy JJ Lil Rot, you know the drill. On principle, it was a vague video with not too much said, but it was one where I came to a realization that this identity that she had built that persona off was a part of her, and it was more than just something that she perceived as trendy, but something that she cared about with people that she cared about. And then the strangest thing happened. I began to feel sympathy for her, which honestly, with everything considered, was one of the strangest feelings, but I kind of understand it.
I still love him, but it is what it is. Sometimes I learned in life, you gotta love people from a distance. Okay, let's say this. My mistake I made with John. If I had kept my expectation out of it, my feelings wouldn't have been hurt. Wouldn't have been hurt, you know? Because if you keep your expectations out of it, you can still be cool with him. Me and John are still friends. We cool. It is what it is. We was friends before that. And that's why I feel like the best relationships come from friendships. Because, you know what I'm saying, you got to be able to be around a person, be cool with a person. They can be your homeboy, be your homegirl. And then y'all get in a relationship. Then y'all do what you do. You kiss, you whoop the whoop. If you have a kid, you are not supposed to tell them, oh, your dad this, your dad that. Because being a kid, they don't know no better. They going to believe you. And they going to treat their parent like shit. You should never want your kid to hate their parent. At the end of the day, that is their parent. Your beef ain't got nothing to do with that kid. Nothing. Don't put your kid in that beef. Your kid is young. Your kid don't know. You know what I'm saying? That's his dad. No matter what, that's always going to be their dad. They only get one dad, they only get one mom. So why would you want to make them hate them?
The video is mature, has a lot of genuinely introspective and well thought out statements, even if not expressed with the greatest articulation. But it showed a maturity, one that I had not observed before, and it demonstrated she had much more awareness than I originally gave her credit for. However, I don't know how long that awareness was there for, as stated in previous parts. Her persona was not the smoothest of adaptations.
Y'all think I'm just like stupid and slow, but I'm actually very smart in person. And I know I should start showing that side on Instagram, but I didn't realize that until now.
In the comments section, there were a load of people implying that actually she'd played us all. A game of 4D chess where she works her way up to the top with trashy antics and then refines her brand. Was that true? Was that the case? Have we all been played?
But, you know what I'm saying, I realize now that, you know what I'm saying, you shouldn't do everything for clout, because let me tell y'all, no matter what everybody's saying, not all pussy is good pussy. I'm gonna keep that 100 with y'all. So, you know what I'm saying? Think before you just do some dumb shit on the internet.
No, I don't think so. As said, I think it's more likely that she got into a character that she became over-invested in with the wrong type of reinforcement, and eventually she snapped out of it. It would have taken a genius to really work out exactly where the trends were going, and I still don't think any of those escapades were a particularly smart route, and I think she understands that too. No one's going to convince me that an altercation with a security guard and a police officer was a good idea that somehow embedded her career. No one could have ascertained the presence of Lil Tay and how that would provide an opportunity for the post-chaos clarity that Vicky demonstrated in that moment, and would open up the numerous opportunities to basically change herself that would come about in the future. It was, of course, a clout game. These things are a clout game. We know she didn't exactly believe it, but she was invested in it for a reason. And I think she eventually came to the realization that not everything is worth the clout that people ascribe to it. And as she puts it so eloquently, not all pussy is good pussy. So what is the good pussy that Victoria is aspiring for nowadays? Oh wait, she said publicity. That was my error. I do apologize there. Unfortunately, my biased hearing is now getting the better of me, because you know me, guys, I love the pussy. Anyhow, back to the point, let's go into our final part.
I want to come out here and really live on my own and learn how to be responsible and mature. I feel like if I live on my own, I grow up. You know, and I feel like I am growing up for my age, but I really grow up, like, no cap, like, because you get to see the real world.
In some videos, Vicky speaks about her own issues with fitting in with the world. And although her struggles don't align with those on a racial basis, they're still struggles nonetheless. They were merely struggles at the time, in my opinion, she sought to remedy in a rather outlandish and unfortunately embarrassing way. However, that doesn't undermine the struggles that she may have gone through, and the ways that she may have wanted to have been accepted that were probably even more destructive. It's just that her struggles didn't necessarily align with behavior that she prescribed. Behaviors that were aggressively unpleasant, unnecessarily provocative, and delusional if she actually believed them. And although I'd argue that she was aware of her racial shortcomings, I still think there was an element of wishful thinking that led her to try and reach that persona. She's never gonna fully shake the stigma that she's gonna be remembered for. And that's why I don't think it's some galaxy brain calculation. She clearly regrets it too. Was it contrived? For sure. But I think it was born out of a desire to find belongings that she had not found in other environments, and when it caught on as a persona, she wanted to use it for the clout and the validation, surrounding herself with people who would support her for it, and maybe for reasons less than wholesome sometimes. It was a huge risk, and it still is. You know, there are things that she said and did that could follow her until the end. However, for what it's worth, even though she's arguably one of the most ludicrous people who I have ever covered, I do think she might deserve some sort of life ahead of her. And it feels weird after all the insensitive garbage that she indulged in that I'd say that. But you know, I'm not one to take away the belonging that she clearly genuinely finds within her community. And I do genuinely believe that she feels at home with the people that she surrounds herself with. It's also just a case of knowing the boundaries and respecting them within that community too, something that she lacked for a long time. You step into someone's house and you respect their rules. I think that has to be kept in mind when you're on the internet, when you're online, provoking yourself onto a culture that you may not be wholly familiar with. And arguably, what may have happened is that familiarization with a greater culture eventually, outside of her circle of friends. She may have realized and become more sensitive to the repercussions. What she says amongst her friends is her and her friends' discretion to a large extent. I don't really care about that. However, when you're broadcasting yourself to a large amount of people, the context changes. And when she finally grew up, it probably dawned on her that she would be held to a much more significant standard, and that persona wasn't worth maintaining for the sake of spikes and attention that it provides. So she did change, and it's arguably worked out much better for her, even if it doesn't give her the instant attention that she sometimes craves.
Do y'all pussy ass hoes see me right now? Makeup done, hair done. A pussy ass hoe could never, but I just want to make this video to all my females out there, like, don't let these little boys distract you from getting your money. Don't let them stress you out. Don't let them lie to you. You better than that. At the end of the day, just stay focused, get to the money, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters, not them. Period. And don't let these little pussy ass hoes distract you either, because they could never. Remember that.
She's still rather aggressive and likes to flex her income in ways that, frankly, I find rather excessive. I'm still not entirely sure why anyone wants to watch people like that. She still releases music that I do not find the most pleasant to the ears, but hey, to the people wondering, yes, she has changed. She's not really abusing the race card anymore. Generally, the target of her rants have become the puss-ass hoes, a much better aim than people who can't say the N-word like she does.
You puss-ass hoes can never take your mama to Jamaica. This is a real hot girl summer. I take my mama on trips. What's your hoes know about taking your mama on trips? Bitch, we in Jamaica.
And you know what? Damn those puss-ass hoes. WoahVicky is going to other countries and you are still restricted to your own land borders due to a lack of monetary income. It's not particularly inspired, but it's not exceptionally bad. I've seen much worse. As for her YouTube content, it has become fairly generic stuff, typically the challenges and so on. It's rather harmless, must I add. It's not gonna provoke any exceptional attention, but for people who want to follow her work, I can't take that away. I think she'll always be the most successful on Instagram because she's best in small doses. For me, no doses at all. Once you take away the provocation, there's not really too much to her personality in my opinion, but that's how I view it. On some positive notes, it seems like she's reconnecting with her mother, which is nice, and she's also an actual adult, so the people following her for her pictures and photos, good job. You're actually following a legal adult for once. A lot of her most controversial videos have been removed by herself, and she seems happy to do that, and I understand why. You can still find those videos, she's not shutting them down necessarily, but you can't have it all your own way. And I think that's something that WoahVicky understands. The story of WoahVicky is an interesting arc because it began long before the character that we were introduced to on the website came to be. A person who clearly became invested in a culture, found solace in the idea that they could become one with these people who accepted her and reinforce that behavior. However, that quickly manifested into conduct, whether contrived or not, that generated a lot of controversy and grew into this destructive persona that ultimately became more of a detriment with every publicity stunt partaken. I don't know the exact mindset that created this, but I don't think she's just some bourgeois girl trying to cash in on a different culture. She clearly has her privileges, but it's not without the struggles either. She just needed a more productive way to deal with it. And if she's found that now, even if I wish she hadn't gone that route, I'm not going to turn her away from her destination.
Help people know you love them while they still here. A motherfucker can be here and be gone the next day. You better show them you love them. You beefing with somebody, you ain't talking to somebody, you got pressure with somebody, you ain't talked to somebody in your family in a long time because they did this to you. But you don't know what they did to me. I don't give a fuck what they did to you. End that shit, squash that shit, call them, pull up on them. It ain't worth it.
So that was the video. It was quite the long one, I'll say that much. And I don't know. I just found like I had a lot to say, and things that I was expecting to find out didn't quite turn out the way they seemed to be. And so when I was surprised, that's what happens. I want to give a big shout out to the editors. They've done a fantastic job. I cannot thank them enough. I think that they, makes such a genuine difference to me. The $10 Patreons right now are on screen. $50 Patreons, I have to give big thanks to Caroline, Sarah Elizabeth, Sumhala Baloo, and the Spectre Angel. Thank you so much. And the $100 Patreons, Adam, Michael, and Brandon Junk. Thank you so much. It means a hell of a lot to me. It does not go without notice. It does not go without notice for sure. Also, if you want to reach me, my Twitter is @TheRightOpinion, Facebook too, Discord, all there if you want to find me. And so that's where I'm gonna be. I don't really have too much else to add. I love everyone a lot. I'm pretty tired, but I'm okay. We're hanging in there. It's been a good recording in spite of its rather long topic. I hope that the video is a good one, and I hope people enjoy it. It's going to be weird if this is my longest video of all time, but hey, that's the way the cards fall sometimes. The cards do whatever they want to do. But yeah, I'm The Right Opinion, and I will see you in the next one.